not acting like a hero. In Spider-Man, Peter's first major mistake happens shortly after he gains his powers. Thrilled by his new abilities, Peter begins using them for personal gain, caring more about money and recognition than helping people. It's during this period that the moment that changes his life forever takes place. After entering a wrestling match to earn enough money to buy a car and impress Mary Jane, Peter wins the fight but isn't paid what he was promised. Moments later, a robbery takes place, and the criminal runs right past Peter. With his speed and reflexes, stopping him would have been easy. But Peter chooses to do nothing.
He's got my money! Thanks.
When the man who was robbed complains, Peter simply tells him it's not his problem.
Now he's gonna get away with my money.
I missed the part where that's my problem.
Not long afterward, fate comes back to haunt him. The very same criminal Peter allowed to escape crosses paths with Uncle Ben. When Peter discovers who is responsible and finally catches up with the man, he realizes it's the exact person he had the chance to stop and deliberately ignored. The shock completely shatters Peter's selfish view of the world. For the first time, he understands that choosing not to act also has consequences. That's why this moment remains the most important lesson in Spider-Man's story. This is where the philosophy that still defines the character today was born.
Remember, with great power comes great responsibility.
Backfired. In The Amazing Spider-Man 2, Peter Parker is already used to taking down criminals with his web shooters, but everything changes when he encounters Max Dillon, an Oscorp employee who transforms into Electro. During their first confrontation in Times Square, Peter tries to handle the situation the way he always does, by using his webs to restrain his opponent. But Electro isn't an ordinary villain. When his electricity hits the webbing, the strands themselves become a pathway for the electrical current. The result is disastrous. Peter's web shooters are badly damaged, and he nearly loses the fight on the spot. Instead of rushing into a rematch without a plan, Peter does what truly sets Spider-Man apart from many other heroes. He studies the problem. Back in the lab, he begins modifying his web shooters to make them resistant to Electro's electrical attacks. But it's actually Gwen Stacy who comes up with the solution.
Okay, well, remember 8th grade science class? If you magnetize a nail with a battery,
Holds an electric charge.
yes.
Well, after that, they get help from a police officer and manage to upgrade the web shooters to withstand electrical surges. And Gwen, you probably should have stayed here.
You're coming with me. Shut the thing. Sorry, I love you. Don't hate me.
When the final battle begins, Peter returns fully prepared.
Oh, thank you, Gwen Stacy.
A second chance. Throughout the Amazing Spider-Man series, Peter Parker struggles with a conflict that ultimately defines his entire journey. Before he dies, Captain George Stacy asks Peter to stay away from Gwen in order to keep her safe from the dangers of a superhero's life.
So I want you to promise me something, okay? Leave Gwen out of it. You promise me.
Peter promises he will, but he can't keep that promise. He tries to walk away several times, yet their feelings for each other are simply too strong. For most of the second film, that decision weighs heavily on his conscience. Peter knows Gwen is in danger by staying with him, but he chooses to continue the relationship anyway. Sadly, the worst happens. During the final battle against Harry Osborn, who transforms into the Green Goblin, Gwen becomes directly involved in the fight. Peter tries to save her, he fires a web, but it's already too late. The loss completely destroys his life. The film shows Peter spending months away from his life as Spider-Man, unable to move on. Years later, in Spider-Man: No Way Home, he reveals that the tragedy turned him into someone far more bitter and aggressive. Then comes his greatest chance at redemption. During the final battle, MJ falls from a great height after the Green Goblin's attack. The moment is hauntingly similar to what happened to Gwen. Without hesitation, Peter dives after her. This time, he doesn't try to catch her with a web. He catches her with his own arms and safely breaks her fall. His reaction afterward is what makes the scene so powerful. Andrew Garfield barely needs to say a word.
Okay.
The emotion in his eyes tells the whole story. For the first time in many years, that version of Peter finally managed to make peace with the mistake that had haunted him for so long: the spider suit. In Spider-Man: Homecoming, Peter Parker believes he's finally reached the next level. After fighting alongside the Avengers in Civil War, Tony Stark gives him a suit packed with technology and features Peter never even knew existed. The problem is that Peter begins relying on the suit far too much. Instead of acting cautiously, he throws himself into increasingly dangerous situations, convinced that the suit can solve any problem. That becomes obvious during the Staten Island ferry disaster, which ultimately has to be fixed by Tony Stark. As a consequence, Tony makes a tough decision. He takes the suit away. Furious, Peter argues that he needs it to be Spider-Man. That's when Tony delivers one of the trilogy's most memorable lines.
If you're nothing without this suit, then you shouldn't have it, okay? God, I sound like my dad.
The real lesson comes shortly afterward. During his battle against the Vulture, Peter becomes trapped beneath tons of concrete. No technology, no Avengers, no one coming to save him. For the first time, he has to rely entirely on himself. At first, he panics.
Please! Hey, please! I'm down here! I'm down
but then he finds the strength to free himself on his own.
If you're nothing without this suit, then you shouldn't have it.
The most interesting part comes after he defeats the villain. Peter finally receives the recognition he's been chasing. Tony offers him an official place among the Avengers, along with an even more advanced suit. But this time, Peter surprises everyone by turning it down. After spending the entire film trying to prove himself to others, he realizes he never needed anyone's approval or a high-tech suit to be a hero.
What the
The false hero. In the next film, Spider-Man Far From Home, Peter Parker is still struggling to cope with Tony Stark's death. The pressure of becoming the next Iron Man weighs on him more than ever, and all he wants is to enjoy his school trip across Europe and spend time with MJ. But his plans change when Quentin Beck appears. He introduces himself as a hero from another dimension and quickly earns Peter's trust. Unlike the other adults around him, he seems to understand Peter's fears and insecurities. Little by little, Peter starts believing Beck is far more qualified to protect the world. Because of that, he makes one of the biggest mistakes of his entire journey. He hands over control of Edith, the powerful technology Tony Stark left specifically for him.
You try him on.
No, come on.
Try him on.
I don't want to try him
Come
on.
on.
Soon afterward, Peter discovers it was all a lie. Beck is actually Mysterio, a master manipulator who uses massive illusions to deceive the entire world. When Peter tries to stop him, he becomes trapped inside terrifying illusions that exploit his greatest fears and leave him questioning reality itself. The turning point comes during the final battle. Surrounded by illusions, Peter realizes that while his eyes can be fooled, his spider sense cannot. Trusting only his instincts, he weaves through the drone attacks and defeats Mysterio. The villain tries to deceive him one last time with words, but Peter has finally learned his lesson. You can't trust just anyone. Crossing the line. In Spider-Man No Way Home, Peter is devastated by Aunt May's death, and revenge is the only thing on his mind. Convinced that the Green Goblin is responsible for taking away the one person who had always been by his side, Peter is about to cross a line there's no coming back from. He wants to kill him. That's when the other two Spider-Men step in, Tobey Maguire's Peter and Andrew Garfield's. Peter know exactly what he's going through because they've been there themselves. Tobey explains that he too was consumed by revenge after losing Uncle Ben, and that it never brought him the peace he expected. Andrew reveals that after Gwen's death, he became a much angrier and more aggressive person. Someone who almost lost the very essence of Spider-Man. The conversation between the three becomes a kind of group therapy, the older Spider-Man passing on a valuable lesson to the youngest, but letting go of revenge isn't easy. At the end, after defeating the Green Goblin, Peter pins him down and prepares to kill him. The scene makes it clear that he's about to cross a line of no return. But before he can, Tobey's Peter steps in. Without saying a word, he grabs the glider and stops the killing blow. The look they exchange says everything. Tobey isn't just saving Norman Osborn. He's saving another Peter Parker from making the same mistake. In the end, Peter lets go of his revenge and uses the cure created by the three Spider-Men. It's an important choice because it shows that defeating an enemy is easy. The hard part is remaining a hero when you have every reason in the world not to be.
You know. It's what we do. Yeah, it's what we do.
The final sacrifice. In the same film, Peter finally learns one of the hardest lessons of his entire journey. Since his very first appearance in the MCU, plenty of people knew he was Spider-Man. Tony Stark, Aunt May, Ned, MJ, Happy Hogan. For a long time, that didn't seem like a problem. But everything changes when Mysterio reveals Spider-Man's identity to the entire world. Suddenly, Peter's life falls apart. His family and friends are hounded by the media, investigated by the authorities, and constantly placed in danger. Trying to fix everything, Peter asks Doctor Strange for help, but the spell goes wrong and ends up bringing visitors from other universes into his reality. Things become even worse when the Green Goblin betrays Peter's trust and causes Aunt May's death. That's when Peter realizes something the other Spider-Men had already learned the hard way. The people closest to him will always be in danger because of his choices. During the final battle, Peter understands that there isn't an easy solution. To stop the multiverse from collapsing, he asks Doctor Strange to cast another spell. This time, not to erase Spider-Man from everyone's memory, but Peter Parker. Everyone forgets who he is, including his best friend and the love of his life. The victory costs him everything. By the end of the film, Peter is completely alone, living in a small apartment and sewing his own suit. No Tony Stark technology, no support team, no one left to help him. Fame went to his head. In Spider-Man 3, after saving Gwen Stacy from an accident, Spider-Man becomes a full-blown celebrity. The entire city treats him like a hero, almost like a pop star. He even gets the key to the city and a parade in his honor. Problem is that Peter starts losing himself in all the attention. Caught up in the excitement, he arrives at the public ceremony by hanging upside down onto the stage, soaking in the applause. That's when he makes the mistake that changes everything. He kisses Gwen Stacy in front of everyone. He recreates the exact same iconic kiss he once shared with Mary Jane in the first film, except this time it's a public performance. MJ is standing there watching in silence, forced to relive one of the most intimate moments of their relationship as it gets turned into a spectacle. The consequences come quickly. Mary Jane feels humiliated, pushed aside, and emotionally erased from Peter's life. Their relationship begins to completely fall apart. That broken trust opens the door for Peter to become even more emotionally unstable during the events that follow. In the end, the lesson is simple. Spider-Man may be loved by an entire city, but none of that matters if he starts hurting the few people who truly care about Peter Parker. He learns the hard way that the suit isn't meant to make him a star. It's meant to protect people, even when nobody is cheering. And the final scene where he returns to the jazz club to dance with MJ shows that he was willing to make things right. A suit you can't trust. Peter Parker is already an experienced and respected hero, but everything changes when an alien symbiote bonds with his suit, creating the famous Black Spider-Man. At first, the transformation seems like a good thing. Peter becomes stronger, faster, and more confident. The problem is that the extra power also begins amplifying everything dark inside him. Consumed by his anger toward Flint Marko, who we eventually learn is the true person responsible for Uncle Ben's death, Peter starts making increasingly aggressive decisions. He stops acting like someone who protects people and begins chasing revenge instead. Little by little, his entire personality changes. He humiliates Eddie Brock, treats his friends with arrogance, and pushes away the people who care about him most. The lowest point comes during the famous jazz club scene. Trying to make Mary Jane jealous, Peter turns the whole situation into a performance driven entirely by his own ego. When everything spirals out of control, he ends up hurting the person he loves most. That's when he finally realizes how much the symbiote has changed him. Filled with regret, Peter rushes to a church and fights a desperate battle to free himself from it. It's one of the trilogy's most symbolic scenes because it shows that Spider-Man's greatest enemy at that moment wasn't a supervillain. It was himself. It's an important lesson because it proves that power without emotional control can destroy any hero. Forgiveness. In the same film, Flint Marko's story brings the trilogy's most important emotional arc to a close. Peter believes he has finally found Uncle Ben's killer. When the police reveal that Marko was involved, he doesn't hesitate to seek revenge. Consumed by hatred and still under the influence of the black suit, Peter hunts Flint through the subway tunnels. The fight is completely one-sided. Using the symbiote's enhanced strength, Peter overwhelms the villain and even ruptures a massive water pipe, causing Marko to dissolve into sand and disappear into the sewers. At that moment, Peter believes it's over. He returns home convinced that his revenge is finally complete. But during the film's climax, everything changes. Flint Marko returns, and instead of attacking, he tells Peter the truth. He didn't kill Uncle Ben out of cruelty. It was an accident, a desperate mistake. He needed money to save his sick daughter, was startled during the robbery, and everything spiraled out of control. That revelation completely shatters Peter's anger. He realizes that all this time he wasn't fighting a monster, he was fighting a broken man. And more importantly, someone a lot like himself. The final turning point comes when Peter chooses forgiveness.
I forgive you.
He recognizes that he also made terrible mistakes, nearly lost himself because of the symbiote, and hurt the people he loved. By letting Flint Marko go, Peter finally breaks the cycle of revenge that began in the very first Spider-Man film. On screen is a video where we show every time Spider-Man's secret identity was revealed. Click and watch. See you there.